Welcome to True Dharma, your complete course on enlightenment. Before I get started with today's primary lesson, I just want to take a quick side journey and address the term enlightenment. My use of the term enlightenment here is bound to cause a little bit of controversy. And the main reason behind this is that there are a number of people out there, well-meaning and many very experienced themselves, who would probably say that it's impossible to even discuss the term enlightenment realistically, much less teach a course on it. But I just want to say in answer to that very briefly here, and I'll discuss more specifically about the term itself and how I define it at a later date. But the truth is, enlightenment is an experience. And as such, it is indeed very, very difficult to discuss clearly, and it leads to all sort of misunderstandings. And many people have become obsessed with the notion of enlightenment. And it is true that at the moment, whether we are talking about Kinsho, a brief flash of enlightenment, or Satori, which is sustained enlightenment, such as Buddha was said to have achieved. This is an experience beyond human conception, and just as it would be impossible or extremely difficult to describe the nature of a beautiful blazing sunset to a person who had been blind their entire lives, so it is with enlightenment. You can never completely explain it without belittling it and diminishing it. So it isn't my purpose to define enlightenment or to help you to somehow magically understand what that state is. But it is the purpose of this course to teach the steps that, faithfully rehearsed and practiced, can lead to that moment. So, for now, hopefully that will satisfy those of you who are feeling a little bit put off by the use of that term. In the meantime, what I would like to discuss is another term that is very misunderstood in spirituality, and that term and some related terms is the term awakening and spiritual awakening and the spiritual path, or as they say in Taoism, the way. There are other terms here that are controversial as well, and also very, very difficult to understand, such as the expression, discovering who you really are. For most people, as they embark on the spiritual journey, when they hear stuff like that, they have no idea what that could possibly mean, discovering what you really are. So in today's lesson, I'm going to attempt to give you some real insight into just what we mean by these expressions and the overall path we will be taking as we continue together along these lessons. Let's get right into it after this. If you are like most people, you have probably spent a significant portion of your life learning new things. For instance, language, mathematics, skills of all different sorts, customs, beliefs, and societal rules about what type of behavior is appropriate versus what is unacceptable, as well as what is valuable and worth achieving in life, as opposed to what is worthless or should be entirely avoided, to name just a few. The list goes on and on. In fact, we have gone so deeply into this mode of acquiring new information and skills that it is difficult for us to realize that the path of true awakening is not one of adding more stuff onto what we are, but of letting it go. Consider a newborn baby. Infants and very young children represent the human being in its purest form. Perhaps not perfect, like an enlightened being, but as close as most people ever get. Babies don't know anything. They don't know their name, nor even what a name is. They don't know where they came from, what they are, and they have no fixed ideas about the world. They have no sense of future or past, nor any real likes or dislikes, prejudices, or notions of good versus evil. They are very simple and perfectly honest. If a baby experiences something pleasant, he or she will smile and giggle. If it is unpleasant, on the other hand, they'll probably cry. There is no fakeness, no screen. Young children exist as pure consciousness, or something very close to it. What happens as we develop, however, is we begin adding stuff onto this pure self. We are given a name, and no longer are we just pure consciousness. Instead, we begin to think of ourselves as the label our parents had printed on our birth certificate. Gradually, we become adapted to our physical body and the physical sensations it transmits to our consciousness, and we eventually become so identified with our body that we come to believe that it is us. As this learning process evolves and deepens, we take on still more notions of what our identity must be. We learn about our roles in relation to other people. We are a brother, a sister, a son, a daughter, a friend, a student. Our nationality and our race. We are American, white, black, Asian, Mexican, and so on, along with a vast list of labels and roles far too extensive to cover here, a few more of which include political affiliation, socioeconomic status, intelligence level, along with whatever it is we happen to do for a living. And of course, we quickly begin to develop judgments, opinions, biases, and likes and dislikes of our own. All this stuff, by the way, along with the general thought system which manages it, is what spiritualists and psychologists both refer to as ego, the false self. Eventually, we become completely lost in this fabricated self, and as a result, we lose touch with the pure, open being we were on the day we were born. Awakening is simply a process in which we learn to identify all this extra baggage and let it go, so that we can once again experience our pure, original self, which is sometimes referred to as the unborn self in Buddhism. It is also notable that this process is exactly what Christ taught when he instructed his disciples that they must become as little children again, quote unquote. In fact, this same lesson has been repeated by many teachers from multiple traditions in various forms throughout the ages. It is one of the most ancient of all spiritual teachings and constitutes the essence of enlightenment. Okay, now hopefully you have a better understanding of just what is meant by the spiritual journey, the term awakening, and discovering what you really are. So, as we've discussed, this is not really a path of adding stuff onto ourselves, but of dropping it away. And it's really interesting when you look at it this way, because it means that the spiritual journey of awakening is really pretty easy. It's much easier, for instance, to set down a heavy weight than it would be to pick up a heavy weight and carry it around with you through life every day. In the same way, we're really letting go of all this extra baggage. And so theoretically anyway, that's much, much easier than taking it on and all of the learning that has gone into building your sense of ego up. So, very briefly, why then does spiritual awakening seem to be so very difficult for many of us? And the truth is this: if you will consider that you have spent your entire lifetime building your sense of ego, and you have become very rooted in this self. This is literally what you view as your self. All of this stuff you've taken on. As you begin to let all of that go, it becomes quite threatening. In a sense, we feel that our very sense of identity is threatened, and our orientation to life. We have taken all this stuff on, and this ego has essentially become our home, and we're protective of it. And so really it is our own resistance and our own fear of loss of identity and disorientation during the transition period, as we are dropping our egoic layers one after the next and exposing what feels to be a vulnerable core. But it is only through actually practicing in this way and letting these layers go that we do achieve eventually full self-realization, and we come to realize that there was no threat. And as we let these layers go, interestingly, we may shine with an even brighter personality than we could have ever invented for ourselves along this long journey through our egoic human existence.